The length of a sermon has always been of interest to both clergy and congregant. I received an email from a member of the temple, she's not here tonight, from the digital pulpit, which just produced an analysis of online sermons. They included nearly 50,000 sermons in their study, and the average length of all sermons is 37 minutes. Aren't you excited? Historical Black Protestant, 54 minutes. Evangelical, 39 minutes. Mainline Christian, 25 minutes. And Catholic, 14 minutes. My conclusion, how lucky you are. On Friday nights, we are clearly below the 37-minute average, probably less than the 14-minute Catholic sermon. So in my effort to prepare for this evening, my initial intention, thinking about sermons in general, was to do a retrospective analysis of length and content of 48 years of Hanukkah sermons that I had delivered. I changed direction, however, when I read the stories that I had written. Tonight, in my sermon, I'm going to take you back to a time when Simon and Garfunkel were big, Neil and Michael today, when I was the youngest rabbi at the temple, and I was often assigned the opportunity to tell a story on Hanukkah. The story often took place in the main sanctuary. We frequently had a bar or bat mitzvah, and I'm so glad we're in the sanctuary tonight because I have the same feel. I feel different today than 40 years ago, but I had the same feel that I had at that time. I want you to know I have not looked at these sermons, these stories, in over 40 years, since the time they were written. And I often wonder to myself, how did I tell stories to a congregation mainly of adults with some young people, and there was a bar and bat mitzvah going on? How did it fit together? Tonight, in much shortened form, it hurt me, by the way, to remove some of my better lines. I'm going to share 3 stories. It's Hanukkah. I need your imagination. I need your wonder. And I'm going to let you decide. Do they relate to our lives? Do they relate to our society? Do they speak to our nation? So I ask you all to go back. How many of you were members of Temple when I first arrived? Wow. A long time, yeah, you got it. A long time ago. The first story goes back to 1974. The story was titled, Puff the Magic Dreidel. In it, I introduced a new community called Mensch on the Hill in the province of Time Never Changes, a place that I often visited. And if you look and you see where the sun is setting, that's exactly the location of this community. Did you know that each year on Hanukkah there was a contest who could give the most important present to the city? I was invited to judge the contest the first year. 2 members of the community worked all year to build a great big menorah. It was in Chaim's home. 2,000 trees were cut down. Unfortunately, they could not get it out of Chaim's house. Mordechai, a very wealthy man, decided to buy a gift, a machine. You put potatoes in one end and latkes come out the other. Unfortunately, they tasted like rubber. But leave it to Mordechai. The rich get richer. He is now producing latke footballs. The rabbi happy that never again will the children have to play with the pigskin. Simcha, 7 years old, did not know what to do. He couldn't build anything or buy anything for the competition. He fell asleep and he began to dream about a wonderful magic dreidel that he called Puff. It could spin and spin and spin. and it never needed to rest. Puff was the dreidel who made everyone who looked at it feel love for everyone else in the room. When he awoke, the dreidel was magically by his bed. He gave it actually to me those many years ago to bring back to Detroit. I was actually going to bring it to here to services tonight, but I'd lost it. I lost it amidst all of the other dreidels of the community. If when on this Hanukkah you spin your dreidel, it makes you feel that you are filled with love and surrounded by love, then in your home you are the owner of Puff. Please take good care of him. We all need love in our lives. A second story. It was titled The Magic of Hanukkah. Once again, taking place in Mensch on the Hill during a time when it was ruled by Charles, a wonderful and caring king. When the king died, Robert came to power, who decided it was time to live off the people rather than with his people. He built a large palace, purchased a yacht, for the first time in history created an army. You see, it was all about him. Money that had been used to buy children's toys was now used for armament. On one day he decreed that Jews will not be allowed to celebrate Hanukkah, nor would Christians be allowed to celebrate Christmas. A new religion was to be born. He was to be worshipped as its king. The religious leaders got together and they sent the rabbi to confront the king. He waited outside and the king sent magicians to try to prove that he could burn oil, enough for one day, and make it last for 8. But none of them were successful. In peace, when finally he was allowed to come before the king, the rabbi told him the burning of the oil was only one part of the Hanukkah story. The greatest miracle is the fact that people stood for freedom and fought with dignity to overcome those who sought to make them feel subservient. A true miracle was that during the time of his father, all people had religious freedom. The miracle, the people who lived in this kingdom loved each other. The rabbi, I was a friend of your father, he added. You were raised with my sons, and now you want us to think of you not as our leader, but as our king, as our God. All of this people in this land are willing to join together with you in peace or rise up against you. The story ends with the king coming to his senses and recognizing that his ego is not the center of everything in the lives of those he should be caring about, and peace reigned in the land. Finally, the last story. The day the dreidel turned green comes from the 1970s. Now, do any of you know that located in Mensch on the Hill, there is a spa where dreidels in the off-season relax as they prepare for Hanukkah? Picture it in your minds. The spa is a big secret. Few people have seen it. At the entrance to the spa, there's a long ramp. Dreidels from all over the world spin their way up the ramp. Dreidels that have been damaged are repaired by other dreidels. Dreidels that are dizzy from spinning, mainly the older dreidels, are allowed to rest. Dreidels that overate latkes are taken to the steam room to reduce. And dreidels that have fallen in love are taken to the honeymoon suite. Unfortunately, dreidels became envious of the menorah, leading to the dreidel liberation movement. A meeting was planned. One dreidel suggested that dreidels refused to go out the next year. A short, overweight dreidel suggested all of the dreidels go out for Hanukkah but refused to spin. A more radical dreidel with long hair suggested that they shut down the festival. Remember, this was from the 1970s. The wisest dreidel of them all, Shlomo, stood up to speak. Everyone stopped spinning. Let us send out Marco dreidel to survey the world, and then we can decide What does it really mean to be liberated? 10 months later, Marco returned from his journey. I left this hall 10 months ago to search for the secret of dreidel liberation, for a way that we could gain greater recognition. I did not know what to expect. I was frightened by the prospect of being out of the spa. So I immediately went to find a friend. I went to visit the Latkes. I hastened to this place, explained to them my problem. One of the Latkes gave me a suggestion, telling me people love latkes because they wore a coat of applesauce and sour cream. And that dreidel liberation appreciation would occur if we dreidels did the same. I covered myself in such a way, but unfortunately I could not spin. I thanked the latkes for their help and went further. I entered a city called Washington. I saw lights on a tree. I thought if I buy myself lights and tinsel and angel hair and dye myself green like a tree, plug myself in. I did this, but I was unstable. No one recognized me. I could barely spin. I then decided that the only way to get an answer was to speak to the menorah. I told the menorah of our community meeting and my mission, and he began to speak. When you went to the latke and wore sour cream, you tried to hide yourself. You found out that you became a sticky mess. When you put on lights and tinsel, trying to identify yourself with a religious symbol of another holiday, you were unrecognizable. You sold our heritage and our tradition. Lights were pretty but had no meaning. Your identity was betrayed. I then asked, what is the answer to dreidel liberation? It is to take pride in who you are, to wear the 4 letters, Nun, Gimel, Shin, Hey, Nes Gadol Hayasham. A great miracle happened there as a statement that Hanukkah still has meaning in our lives, a time for us to stand up proudly. The fact that oil sufficient only for one day burned brightly. And when children play with you, when families gather around together, they will find joy. Marcos stopped speaking for a moment, and there was a tear in his shin. There is no competition between us and the menorah. That was in our imagination. We are both proud and meaningful symbols of our faith. And so consider these 3 stories. In story 1, puff the magic dreidel, spin and feel love. All of us, no matter how old or young, we need this in our lives. In story 2, the magic of Hanukkah, a king turned tyrant. Return to a time when your land is built on love and respect and not anger and hostility. It's a theme as old as time. Final story, the day the dreidel turned green. Be true to yourself, Jewish people. Be happy with who you are and what you have. And now look around in the world and be green with envy. We are a people who have accomplished so very much. Wishing you all a happy Hanukkah with a reminder, do not become too old to enjoy or to tell a good story. Shabbat Shalom.